It's Daz. A lot always happens between one upload to the next. And one of the major world events you've probably heard about is that Pope Francis passed away at the age of 88 on Monday, April 21st, in the morning. That for some was Easter Sunday, which I do not think is a coincidence. When I first started this channel, I had opinions about the end time. Some of those opinions have changed, some of them remain the same, and you don't have to agree with me. One of those strong opinions I had was that the United States was Babylon. And I still, to some degree, believe the United States is part of it, but I don't think it's just the United States. And I'll explain why I've changed my mind, but first I want to read to you Revelation 18. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great powers, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and cage of every unclean, hateful bird. For all nations have drunken of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, until she know sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judge her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her, and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Sounding afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, and of pearls and fine linen, and purple and silk and scarlet, and all thine wood, and all manner vessels of ivory, and all manner vessels of most precious wood, and brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon and odors, and ointments, and frankincense and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and beast, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, slaves, and souls of men. And the fruits of that thy soul lust after are departed from thee, and all the things which are dainty and godly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which are made rich by her shall stand afar off, fear of torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, the great city that was clothed in fine linen, and purple, and scarlet, and decked with gold, and precious stones, and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster, and all the company, in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, the great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she is made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall the great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers, musicians, and pipers, and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall found no more in thee. And the sound of millstones shall be heard no more at all in thee, and the light of a candle shine no more at all in thee. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all. For the merchant were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints, and all that were slain upon the earth. So that is detailing to us the fall of Babylon. And I'm going to go back a scripture before her fall. So we get a snapshot that Babylon is wealthy, and many nations look to her as an example of wealth, and they valued what came out of her, but now she's in ruins. But backing up a bit, in Revelation 17 it says, "And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will shew unto thee the judgment of a great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornications. And upon her forehead was the name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and the beast that carried her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell in the earth shall wonder whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundations of the world. And they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and one is, and the other is not yet to come. And he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and of the 7 goeth into perdition. And 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give the power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is the Lord and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said unto them, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are people and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put their hearts to fulfill this, and will to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is the great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. All right, so here's my hot take in all of it. Again, you can agree or disagree. I'm not saying this is all facts, but this is just something I've observed over time in the last 11 years. The reason I thought of the United States as being the Babylon or the harlot was simple, because we've been considered the leader of this modern world. And it's been that case since about World War I. And in many ways, I would say that the paradigm that we've lived in has been ruled, at least I'm talking from being in the Western Hemisphere, by the West. For a long time, Britain was considered kind of that leader, and then the United States took the place as the lead. Now we're seeing a shift in a world order where China is slowly creeping up to become that new #1 power. I don't think it's a coincidence that China is often represented with dragons. It's within the mythology, and that they're also communist. And they're joining forces with other communist nations, and you're seeing a flip of what they call, when they're talking about sociology, global north versus global south. Part of Trump's whole strategy is trying to stop globalization, when I talked about this last week, Save America, I had put the picture of the creature from Jekyll Island up there, because authors like that author are against globalization. They're against a lot of things that the Federal Reserve has done, and the US dollar being weakened and no longer backed by gold. This battle has been going on for longer than a century or so, but I do see where in the future, like it or not, things are going to shift, where the power is going to shift into the East's hand. And so the East, to me, is the beast. It doesn't mean there isn't an Antichrist figure. That doesn't mean that there isn't supernatural things happening in the background, because we know, if you read in the book of Daniel, that all nations have principalities that rule over them, like the prince of Persia or the prince of Greece. We know that these were angels, not actual princes that Michael was warring with. But back in, I'd say, 2019 into 2020, I had a revelation that rather than it just being the United States that is kind of in this harlot position, it's the Western paradigm that we've known. If we look at the seals and we look at the first one was to conquer, this is what the West has done. This is how Christianity spread all over the world. It started with the apostles in the early church, but because it spread into places like Asia Minor and Europe, then those converts were able to then take it to the New World. And a lot of people's views of Christianity have been tainted because the holy has been mixed with the profane. The reason why the harlot is called the harlot is not because she just is sexually immoral or loose with who she sleeps with in a figurative way. In the Bible, when someone is a harlot, in cases when we're talking about beliefs, it's someone who has access to the truth. So when Israel would play the role of the harlot, it meant that they were turning their backs on God and seeking out other religions. What makes the harlot so devious is that she has the truth of the gospel and she spreads the truth of the gospel, but she also mixes the profane into it, which we've seen with the colonial days and imperialist days where we had the Catholic Church, even within the Protestant movement, all these different denominations. And what we see with modern Catholicism a lot of times is that it's very universal. A lot of cultures mix their own ideas of their gods and goddesses into it. And even the idea of praying to saints and everything else, basically they kind of took what old style Judaism was, and instead of a rabbi, it's now a priest. And now you have a pope instead of a high priest. And instead of getting the message of the gospel, which was that we can go directly to God, that he died for our sins, we no longer need to follow the law. It's been fulfilled. Not that it was done away with, but it was fulfilled, so we no longer put old wine in new wineskins. I feel like a lot of Catholicism kind of mirrors what Judaism was. And so in many ways, the Catholic Church and our modern Western Church is kind of like Mystery Babylon. Not saying there isn't a true remnant, because there is a true remnant, the same way there's a true remnant of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel. And the reason why she has many nations in her is she has nations because A, people travel, B, we had a slave trade, we had people coming who were from other countries, migrants, immigrants. We have people that were already here in the land, like Native Americans, and we're all mixed now as a group of people. And I think it's really telling when it talks about the horror of her being destroyed, because it's kind of like what we're seeing now, where people have had this high esteem on certain labels and brands. People hold them in high regard because they're celebs, they're idols, wear these brands, or because it's a status symbol, but it's made worthless. And in many ways, what's happening with the conflict in China, and then China now snapping up more countries into their corner and their alliance with Russia and North Korea, it's like different nations that never had a chance to rise or to have that power are now getting that opportunity. So I do believe that the beast is the East, but the head honcho is actually China, which everyone always focuses on Russia, but I believe it's China. And I believe that the West is Babylon and Mystery Babylon, and the US is like the head honcho. So it is pretty much like the harlot, but America would not be America without earlier nations before it forming it. And in many ways, China is a very old civilization. They've been around for a long time. And that's one thing they've said when they're going up against Trump. But we are watching a shift in world order. We're watching the global south, as they call it, overtake the global north. And Trump is trying to fight this change. But I do think it's inevitable. My theory is, and I could be wrong, that he'll succeed to some degree in lowering the deficit, but a lot of regular everyday Americans are going to suffer. Like the whole idea of going after everyday people to garnish their wages to get back student loan money. And really, we're seeing with a lot of these policies, those in between and those at the bottom are being squeezed dry. And this is what I've come to observe. I think that whatever or whoever the new pope is that comes into power is going to have a hand to play in all of this. And time will tell, but there is a shift. And this whole BRICS thing isn't a coincidence either. But I'd like to know what your thoughts are on this. Another thing I will say too is I think one big downfall of this goes back to the story of Easter and Resurrection Day. The reason why Jesus was rejected, in my opinion, was because of pride. They had too much pride to accept him as the Messiah. He didn't come from the right pedigree. He didn't have the look they wanted. He didn't come in the package. He didn't come to overthrow the Romans, but he came and he gave the gospel. So they ended up rejecting him, which led to everyone being able to get saved if they believed. That's the same thing that caused the original sin with Adam and Eve, when Eve had too much pride and listened to Satan and thought, well, she could be like a god. And then instead of Adam listening to God, he listened to his wife. The same thing is happening with the fall of these nations. All this is backed by pride. The reason why nations fall and then they rise and fall and they get outsmarted is because of pride. There's nothing wrong with loving where you're from, but sometimes people get so caught up in nationalism, patriotism, their language, their skin color, whatever they feel pride in, forgetting that the true purpose of us being here is it's our job to make it through this world and see Christ. But a lot of people get caught up in that, and that's why we often fall from grace. But again, I'd like to know what your thoughts are on it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care. God bless. Until next time.